Today, history has taken a dramatic turn in Burkina Faso. A man who once stood at the very top of power is now sitting behind the walls of a military detention cell in Ouagadougou. The former leader who ruled briefly, fled the country, and lived in exile is now back home, not as a president, but as a defendant facing the full weight of the law. The transitional government has officially opened legal proceedings against Paul-Henri Damiba. The charges have been read, the promises have been made, and the world now knows what he is being accused of. One thing is clear from the start: there will be no execution. That option has been removed entirely after Burkina Faso gave formal guarantees to Togo before his extradition. So the question is no longer whether he will live or die. The real question now is how many years of his life will be spent behind prison walls. According to official statements, the case against Damiba is not focused on just one issue. The authorities are pursuing multiple accusations at once. First, there are serious allegations of financial crimes. Investigators claim that while he was in power, public resources were misused and state funds were diverted for personal or political purposes. In simple terms, he is accused of corruption, illegal enrichment, and financial misconduct involving national money. These kinds of charges have followed many former leaders across Africa. Public office has too often been treated as a pathway to wealth instead of a responsibility to serve. Burkina Faso is now saying that this pattern must end and that those who misuse state funds must answer for it. But the second group of accusations is far more serious. These are not about money. These are about power and security. The authorities claim that Damiba was involved in plotting violence against the current leadership. They allege that from exile, he was connected to plans aimed at destabilizing the country and even attempting to assassinate the current head of state. At this stage, these remain allegations. As always, the principle of innocence until proven guilty must stand. But if prosecutors manage to demonstrate that he was truly involved in such actions, the case moves from corruption into the realm of national security. That changes everything. Before Damiba was handed over, Togo demanded 3 guarantees from Burkina Faso. First, that his life would be protected. Second, that he would receive a fair and lawful trial. And third, that he would not be executed. These conditions were accepted in writing. This does not mean freedom. It does not mean mercy. It simply means that the harshest possible sentence would be life imprisonment rather than death. In Burkina Faso, a life sentence is not symbolic. There is no early release for crimes of this magnitude, especially when they involve threats to state stability. If convicted on financial crimes alone, he could face decades in prison. If convicted on conspiracy or treason-related charges, the punishment could amount to imprisonment for the rest of his natural life. Damiba is still in his 40s. A 20 or 30-year sentence would mean growing old inside a cell. A life sentence could mean never walking free again. This sends a powerful message across the Sahel. Exile is no longer a shield. For nearly 3 years, Damiba lived in Togo under protection. He was restricted but safe. Togo has a long tradition of sheltering leaders who fall from power. Many have passed through Lomé after political crises in their home countries, but that tradition has now been tested and broken. Why did this happen now? Why after all this time? Several forces came together at once. First, the political landscape of West Africa has changed. Burkina Faso is no longer standing alone. It is now part of a new alliance with Mali and Niger, a bloc that has rejected ECOWAS and built its own regional partnership. When one of these 3 states makes a request, the others stand behind it. That creates pressure and influence. Togo found itself in a difficult position. Protecting one former leader meant risking tensions with 3 neighboring governments at the same time. That is not a small calculation. In diplomacy, survival depends on balance, and in this case, keeping Damiba became more costly than handing him over. The second reason was public anger inside Burkina Faso. When authorities announced that new coup plots had been uncovered, the streets reacted. Young people organized, protests broke out, and volunteers prepared to defend the transition. This was not manufactured emotion. It reflected real fear and real frustration. Togo saw a country united behind its leadership, backed by allied governments. it became clear that holding on to Damiba would place Togo on the wrong side of a rising political wave. Third, Burkina Faso followed formal legal channels. An official extradition request was submitted. Procedures were respected. This allowed Togo to present the decision as a legal obligation rather than a political betrayal. And finally, the promises mattered. Togo demanded guarantees of safety and fairness. That gave them diplomatic cover. But in reality, once Damiba crossed the border, the responsibility became entirely Burkina Faso's. This moment sets a new precedent for Africa. For decades, there was an unwritten rule. When a leader was overthrown, exile meant safety. You leave, and your country leaves you alone. No official treaty said this, but everyone understood it. That understanding is now broken. What happened here means that exile is no longer permanent protection. Governments can now pursue former leaders beyond their borders if they believe justice demands it. This has consequences far beyond Burkina Faso. Across West Africa, many former leaders are watching closely. In the Gambia, the former president who ruled for more than 2 decades remains in Equatorial Guinea. A special tribunal has been approved to examine crimes from his era. His future now looks more uncertain than ever. In Guinea, the former president, who was removed in 2021, returned from medical treatment abroad only to face new charges, including treason. His age offers no shield from accountability. In Niger, the former head of state remains confined inside the presidential palace, living under guard in the same compound as the man who replaced him. International bodies have raised concerns, but the new government refuses to release him. In Côte d'Ivoire, Blaise Compaoré still lives in exile after being sentenced in absentia for his role in the assassination of Thomas Sankara. Despite rumors of death, no official confirmation exists. He remains part of this same story of unfinished justice. All of these figures now face the same question. If Damiba could be extradited, who is next? This is why this case matters. It is not only about one man, it is about a shift in African political accountability. Political asylum only works when it is guaranteed. The moment it becomes negotiable, it becomes temporary shelter, not true refuge. This creates a new reality. Removing leaders from power no longer ends their story. Their actions can follow them. Justice can cross borders. At the same time, this trial must be handled with extreme care. The eyes of the world are watching. Western media will analyze every step, looking for claims of abuse, revenge, or unfair treatment. The AES countries already face intense scrutiny and criticism. Any mistake will be amplified. That is why transparency is essential. The trial must be legal, public, and credible. If proceedings are broadcast openly, if evidence is presented clearly, and if defense rights are respected, it will strengthen Burkina Faso's position and silence many critics. This is not about jungle justice. This is about law. A fair process will show that the revolution stands for order, not chaos. Already, some accused conspirators have appeared on state television to confess their roles. Many hope that Damiba's trial will also be open to the public. That would demonstrate confidence and legitimacy. For Burkina Faso, this is also about closing a chapter of repeated coups and instability. Since 2022, power has changed hands through force more than once. This trial represents an attempt to end that cycle through legal means instead of violence. Most importantly, the threat has been neutralized. Damiba can no longer plan from abroad. He can no longer organize destabilization. The country can now focus on security, reconstruction, and unity, but the long-term consequences are still unfolding. Every exiled leader in Africa is paying attention. Every opposition figure in exile is reconsidering their safety. The era of guaranteed exile may be ending. This moment forces a serious conversation. Should African nations allow leaders accused of grave crimes to live freely abroad, or should justice finally catch up with them? The answers will shape the future of governance on this continent. For now, the charges are known. The guarantees are signed. The man who once ruled is now awaiting judgment. There is no trial date yet, no clear timeline, and no confirmed legal team. But what is certain is that this process will not be ignored. This case will test Burkina Faso's commitment to law, and it will test Africa's evolving standards of accountability. accountability. The revolution has reached a courtroom and the entire continent is watching. Go to the comment section and tell me what you think. Are you satisfied that the death penalty is off the table? Do you believe this trial will be fair and transparent? And what does this mean for other leaders in exile across Africa? Your voice matters. This conversation matters. If you want to keep following this story and others shaping Africa's future, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. This is Voice of Africa: Truth, History, Accountability.